So in this module, I'm going to demonstrate the migration of one of our virtual machine. So we'll go ahead and migrate the compute resource and then the storage resource for one of our VM. Before we could get into the migration stage though, we would need to set up our VM kernel port for vMotion traffic. Okay, so the two hosts that we'll be doing our migration between, we'll need to set up the network in between those. So let's get started with that first. So I'll go into my host and cluster view here. I'll be working with ESXi 1 and ESXi 4. Okay, so let's start with 1. So we'll go ahead and set up the networking in 1. So I select ESXi 1 here under manage, and then the networking option here. I'm not going to create additional vSwitches here. I'll just use the default vSwitch 0. Okay, so we have a couple of port groups and VM kernel port configure on this vSwitch. So what I'm going to do is add a network in here. And I need a VM kernel network adapter. So hit next there. I would leave the default here since we'll be working with the vSwitch 0. Hit on next. And then here I'll give this a name. So we'll want to have the same name on both hosts. So in this case, I'll label this vMotion, and this is case sensitive too. If we wanted this to run over a particular VLAN, we could enter that VLAN here. For services, we need to enable vMotion traffic on this VM kernel port. So I'll go ahead and select vMotion traffic here. Okay, and then I'll hit on next. Ideally, you'd want to have a static IP address here too. You don't want this to be changing all the time. But just for testing here, I'll leave this to automatic. So it would go ahead and pull an IP address from our DHCP server. I'll just hit on next here. We have a little summary here. This is the port group name, and it's enabled for vMotion traffic. And I'll just hit on finish here. So once this process is completed, we should see our vMotion VM kernel port at the bottom here. Okay. What we could have done also is go into the properties of one of our other VM kernel port here and just enable that for vMotion traffic. So for example, our VM kernel adapters here, we could have gone into our management network under our VM case 0 here and edit this and just enable vMotion traffic on this. Okay, so in this case here we would have our vMotion traffic and our management traffic running on one VM kernel port. So I'm just going to cancel that there. Here is our vMotion VM kernel port, and if you look over to the right here, it's enabled for vMotion traffic. Okay, so we'll want to do the same thing on our second ESXi host, which is ESXi 4 here. So we have one vSwitch here, and we go ahead and add our vMotion VM kernel port. So I'll leave this to the vSwitch 0 here. I'll give this the same name. Okay, and then I'll enable this for vMotion traffic. And I'll just hit on next here. I'll leave this to automatically update. Enable for vMotion traffic, and then I'll just hit finish. You should now see the VM kernel port come up here. So here it is. Okay, as far as networking goes for vMotion, we're finished with that requirement there. Also, the virtual machine, the particular VM port group that is connected to, you would want to have those port group identical to between the two ESXi hosts. All right, so we'll be working with the DSL VM here. So let's just see. Here, you would want to have identically name VM port group. In this case, it's a VM network on both of your ESXi hosts. All right, so this virtual machine is up and running. To migrate this, we would come over to our VM and templates view here, and then right click on this virtual machine, and then go to our migrate option here. But before we do that, let's just take a look here on which host this VM is located. As you can see, this DSL VM is located on ESXi 4. So let's go ahead and migrate this. So once we hit migrate there, we have a couple options. If we select the first option to change the compute resource only, we are performing a vMotion operation here. Okay, this is vMotion. If we select change data store only, we are performing a storage vMotion operation. If we go to change both the compute resource and storage, we are performing a vMotion and storage vMotion operation in one selection. Right? So for now, I just want to move this virtual machine, the compute resource, over to ESXi 1. Okay? So this virtual machine is running, and this is the only virtual machine on ESXi 4. And let's just say we need to bring ESXi 4 down for maintenance. So we need to just migrate this virtual machine out of ESXi 4. So I'll just select change compute resource only. Okay, so here I am presented with a with options for which host we would like to move this virtual machine to, or the cluster. But in this case here, I just need to move it to this specific host, ESXi 1. Okay, so this is the compatibility check I was mentioning in our slide. Okay, so the compatibility check has succeeded. If we had any issues, it would have popped up here. Any issues that would have prevented us from moving on, that would have showed up here. So I'll just go ahead and select next. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier too, the destination network. So you'd want to have this identically named VM port group on your destination host. Okay, so in this case here, this is at the default VM network. Okay, the compatibility check for the network succeeded too. So we'll just hit next here. And then we have a couple options here. If you'd like to use high priority for migrating this virtual machine, or just use regular vMotion. Okay, in this case here, it may use some more CPU resources, but it would it complete a bit faster than if you were to do a regular vMotion. So I'll just leave the default there and hit on next. Okay, so here we have a little summary. Okay, we're not moving the storage, we're just moving the compute resources. So we see that there. Virtual machine name, the cluster we're on, we're moving to ESXi 1 with the vMotion priority of high. So once I hit finished here, this would go ahead and migrate our compute resource from ESXi 4 to ESXi 1. So if you look at the bottom here, the operation is going through, relocating our virtual machine. So that's it. Our virtual machine DSL VM is now on ESXi 1 instead of ESXi 4. So next I will demonstrate our storage vMotion operation. So let's just assume that this DSL VM, it is stored on our local disk here, and we just implemented some sort of shared storage in our environment. Okay, so actually let me just pull up our host here. So let's say ESXi 1, related objects here, data store. So ESXi 1, our VM is currently in our local storage on this host, and we just implemented a SAN in our environment. So let's just assume this WinSAN here. This is our iSCSI SAN, and we are moving over our VM, which is currently located on our local hard drive on this ESXi host, to our shared storage over here. For ESXi 4, it also have visibility to the same SAN here, or WinSAN. Okay, so let's assume we're moving to some sort of shared storage now. In our case, the WinSAN or an iSCSI SAN. Alright, so I have my DSL VM here. I'll just right click again, go back to migrate. Okay, so in this case, rather than performing a vMotion operation, I want to perform a storage vMotion operation. Okay, so I need to just change the storage. So in this case here, I'm moving over my virtual machine files to our shared storage from our local ESXi 1 storage here. Actually, let's just confirm that. Let's just confirm that on our ESXi 1 local. Okay, so here is our virtual machine with all of its files. So we're moving this entire virtual machine folder now from local storage to our iSCSI SAN. Okay, we're moving all of these files here. So let's just go back here, right click this again, go to migrate, and I need to change the data store, change the storage, sorry. I'll hit on next here. So we'll go ahead and scan for the different data stores here. So we are moving our VM files over to this iSCSI SAN. So it just went ahead and it validated it, and the compatibility check has succeeded. Recall I mentioned we could change the virtual disk format once we're performing a storage vMotion operation. So here is where we would do that. So it's currently a thin disk, so we could leave that to the default, or we could change the provisioning type for the disk. Okay. If this was a thick disk, we would have the option of converting it to a thin disk. This is one of the way we could convert a thick to a thin disk. And if we were using any storage policy, we'll just select that there too. So I'll just go ahead and hit next. So we have a little summary here. Virtual machine name is going to change the storage. And it's going to leave the original compute resource. So this at the end of this vMotion operation, this VM will still be running on ESXi 1. This is where it would be moving to our vSAN data store. So let me just hit finish here, and then we could see the status at the bottom here. Okay. Once this is completed, we should now see that this virtual machine is on our vSAN here. So let me just browse this. And here is our DSL VM files over on the vSAN. If you were to go back to the local data store, ESXi1 local data store, the DSL VM is no longer here, the files. Okay. The final option we have is to perform both vMotion and storage vMotion operation in one go. So let's go back to our DSL VM here again. I'll right click this, go to migrate. I need to change both the compute resource and the storage resource. It's giving us the option here which to perform first. Ideally, you'd want to move your compute resource and then your storage resource. So we'll leave the default there and just hit on next. Alright, so for compute resource, we're currently on ESXi 1, and we want to move over the compute resource to 4. It's just going to go ahead validate that. That has succeeded, so I'll just hit next here. And then for our compute resource, we'll select where we want to move this VM to. So it's currently on our iSCSI SAN. So let's just assume this was a NFS SAN or another, let's say a fiber channel SAN. So you're moving to some higher capacity or higher throughput SAN. So we could select that there and just go next. We have the option here of selecting the network again. Hit on next, and then we'll go ahead and assign a high priority to this and hit on next again. We have a little summary again here, and then we'll just hit on finish. So it would go ahead and perform both a vMotion and a storage vMotion operation on this VM.